Hi, I'm Henry Emery.
And I'm Captain Dennis Gliddon. And we're going to talk about the problems of using tests of English for the ICAO LPRs for the selection and admission to English medium ab initio flight training.
Language for aviation training is important. For students to be successful, they need adequate language proficiency. Flight schools, airlines and students, everybody needs an appropriate measure of language, something that taps the right skills and level and yields the right information. Training repeats and failures are very costly and inconvenient. If students can't speak English at the point they get into the aircraft with the instructor for the first time, they may be unsafe, but it's almost certainly very inefficient to use a flight instructor as a language teacher and an aircraft as a language classroom. So language proficiency is important. How to measure it is the question.
ICAO Level 4 has been a very successful language brand. It is now recognised as a standard for the industry, which is excellent, but very often the LPRs are misapplied and are seen as the standard for every context, often including cabin crew, maintenance staff and cadets. Let's clarify what the LPRs are about.
The ICAO LPRs are a pilot and ATC licensing requirement. They are all about safe RT communication, which includes standard phraseology and plain English. In fact, that's the only thing they are about. Nothing more and nothing less than air-ground communications. ICAO document 9835 is very clear about this.
For tests to measure in accordance with the ICAO LPRs, they need a certain number of characteristics. Two of these are content and assessment. On content, the task must address RT communication, both in terms of what the candidate listens to and what the candidate says. On assessment, the task must generate scores with reference to the ICAO rating scale. If these two qualities are not present, then it is not an ICAO English test. It's as simple as that.
Imagine you are a student. Imagine some of the things you might need to do in the first 2 months of flight school. You might need to introduce yourself, understand the school fire alarm procedures, listen to an instructor talking about atmospheric pressure, find the lunchbox you left in the cafeteria, read a textbook about principles of flight, chat with a student from another country, ask the instructor a question about airspace in front of 25 other students, call reception to tell them you're sick, and listen to an instructor as he raises the nose into a gentle left-hand turn. Now, how many of these language use tasks are covered in an ICAO language test? None.
So, you're a student, you have a good level of English, but you have 0 hours. First time abroad, first day at school. How much do you know about RT communications? Could you even find the radio on the pedestal? Could you make a call to ATC? Could you understand a busy approach controller sequencing arrivals for ILS approaches to parallel runways? Unlikely. For this student, this is a knowledge problem, not a language problem.
So what happens when we use ICAO English tests for student selection? Well, the results are not good. And it's happening in many places around the world. Here's an example from Asia.
Concerned about test quality, a regulator recently approved a new test for flight crew licensing. The test includes listening to extended recording of RT comms in routine and non-routine situations, and includes an RT role-play task in which non-routine events happen. This requires candidates to switch back and forth from standard phraseology to plain language with ATC. This test appears to be an appropriate measure of language for airline pilots.
However, a well-known airline now uses the test Dennis described to select cadets from the local population for a sponsored flight training program. This is full of problems. Problem 1. Good students fail. No matter how much they prepare, Many students perform badly because they have no experience in radio communications. Some have excellent language proficiency, but they don't know what RVSM means or how to talk to ATC about a TCAS RA. So they do not get ICAO Level 4 and they do not get selected because of knowledge, not language. A life-changing career opportunity is lost.
Problem 2, test washback is negative. Candidates with 0 hours prepare for the test by learning RT comms on their own, without an expert instructor and without context. This means that they mislearn phraseology, which is a problem for instructors during flight training. Local language teachers start to sell ICAO English preparation courses to exploit the captive market. In our example, the teacher, advertising herself as ICAO certified, offers courses dealing with English in routine and non-routine situations on the radio. The training addresses language, not knowledge. The teacher is not an aviation subject matter expert, so the training doesn't help the students pass the test. And that doesn't prepare the students for the things they will need to do at flight school, such as read manuals, listen to instructors in the classroom. The students are not getting what they need.
Problem 3. Everyone gets frustrated. There's an apparent injustice in the system. The candidates who fail are understandably angry. But my English is good, they say. I got IELTS 7. They complain to the test provider. The airline doesn't receive the number of candidates they need and begins to realise that good potential is being lost. But they see it as a problem with the raters, not with the test. This guy has excellent English, they say. Why did you give him level 3? They complain to the test provider and the regulator. So the regulator audits the test provider and sees a huge spike in candidate appeals. They question the test provider's integrity. The test provider tries to explain to the candidates, the airline and the regulator that the test isn't valid for the purposes of student selection. But everyone is adamant that level 4 is the industry standard, no matter what.
Problem 4. Students are not ready for flight training. For those candidates that do scrape through with a level 4, they arrive at flight school faced with a language challenge they are not prepared for. For example, the ICAO LPRs explicitly do not address the reading and listening skills they need for ground school. So students who cannot read very well may well slip through the net. Consequently, when faced with the enormous ATPL reading syllabus, they struggle. The flight school and the airline customer are confused. These students got level 4, so why can't they cope? The ICAO LPRs are called into question. The CFIs had to say the ICAO LPRs are a complete waste of time.
What's the solution? Well, the regulator could change the test. They could revert to the test they used before, the one with generic content and tasks that anyone understood and everyone performed well in. The one with no RT communications. The one with the interview with questions like, why are you interested in aviation? It produced scores, according to the rating scale, so the job is done, right?
Wrong. Yes, it produces ICAO-like numbers, but it does not tap into the radio communications, and so it cannot be an ICAO English test. Students may pass it and get selected, but it is a totally inappropriate measure for professional airline pilots.
A colleague once described such tests as speaking tests with an aviation flavour. And that's exactly what they are. You can't just write aviation on a speaking test and claim it's appropriate for the ICAO LPRs. When used with airline pilots, they produce meaningless measures and are a menace. They undermine the implementation of ICAO's safety objective.
We've raised many issues in our presentation today, but we have 3 things we would like you to remember.
Takeaway 1. ICAO English tests must directly engage RT communications, which includes standard phraseology and plain language. If they don't, they are not ICAO English tests.
Takeaway 2. Use of ICAO English tests for student selection and admission produces poor and invalid measures of language proficiency. It constitutes test misuse. It is unfair for the student, often slamming the door closed on a future career. It is unhelpful for the airline sponsor. They lose out on potentially good candidates. It is unhelpful for the flight schools, who do not know whether students will be able to cope. And it undermines ICAO's safety objective.
And takeaway 3. For student selection, we must develop or select tests which measure the ability of the student to cope with the broad flight school environment, listening to instructors and interacting with other students, and reading texts designed for students of aviation training. Such a test cannot and should not be a test of ICAO Level 4.
As a professional community, it is our responsibility to serve the aviation industry with the development and selection of appropriate assessment tools. We must choose the right tool for the job. In the case of student selection and admission, ICAO Level 4 is a square peg in a round hole.